in a split second, we can do something that will change the course of our lives forever. On my way to school one day on bicycle, a guy hit me at a traffic light, stole my bike and took off. And it was a fairly expensive bike. But I uttered a statement at that moment in regards to that one person, but stereotyped an entire race. And this guy happened to be a black man. And I didn't say I hate the black man, I said I hate black people. And it was almost without thinking, a split-second reaction to an event. In making that statement, my life changed direction. And so having picked up on this trend to hate black people, especially coming from South Africa, where at this moment within the political sphere, segregation and apartheid was rampant. It was very easy for me to connect with people who felt like I did, who saw things the way I did. And I was introduced to the world of white supremacy and new Nazism and was sworn into the Afrikaner resistance movement. And we firmly believed that in fighting or ridding the South African country of the Black Plague, we were doing God's will. This is really where my journey went south. I got so zealous for this project that I gave it my all. And I dropped out of school with just a few credits left to complete my degree and just pursued politics, especially when the new government was about to come in. I was seen at rallies burning the flag, made it on to newspapers and 8 o'clock news. I was a major political activist, and so much so that the government at the time who supported this agency, even if it was under covers or under the table, if you will, recruited me to come and do work for them. This would be anything from doing recon work to actually doing the dirty work they wanted me to do, which would be to neutralize any unwanted element. I found myself, out of just a political mindset, taking on the role of judge and executioner when it came to people that the government had targeted. I found myself with blood on my hands, literally and figuratively, regularly. And all of this happened because in a split second, I made a decision to hate a group of people. The guy stole my bike, and he could have been any color under the sun. He just happened to be black. But that split-second reaction is where it all came from. And so here, instead of just hating one man or being upset with one guy for stealing my bike, I was now targeting an entire race. And I was willing to do whatever it takes to get rid of them. This course of action working for the intelligence community and the armed forces sent me across the country, all around the world, to try and neutralize these cells. One of my major turning events was in the streets of Bophuthatswana, the former Bophuthatswana. A friend of mine who had just weeks before become a newborn Christian, telling me that he was wanting to get out of this business, was shot with a 20mm round, ground-to-air round. And it was one of the most gruesome sights that I laid my eyes on. And from the residue that was on the ground, there was a cross, a crucifix he carried around his neck. And for the first time, I felt emotion in many, many years, as I realized his desire to get out, but his failure to do so. And so here on the streets of Bophuthatswana, running around, I started questioning myself as to what I was doing here, why I was here, why do I have to rely on this world of violence? And really the only thing that came to mind is the adrenaline and, well, the finances attached to it. We were making good money. But I still had this void, this sense of needing to belong to something. I had to try and think of a time that I was content with life, because that's where I wanted to go back. That's where I felt the sense of belonging. And the only thing I could remember was reading the Bible stories with my mother at 5 o'clock in the morning, having regular worship. And that was the only time I was very content with life. And I wanted that back. And so I picked up the scriptures. But it is really difficult to make these changes when you're so ingrained and that's really all you can do, all you've been trained to do. And so in trying to reevaluate where I was at, The government sent me to Japan to do some more martial arts training to help me with some of my unarmed skills that I was going to bring back to the country to help train the officers underneath me. But while I was there, the first democratic elections in South Africa took place. And for years, I'd been walking around with a bullet with Nelson Mandela's name on it. A man who was a communist, although by this stage he had converted to Christianity in prison, was the leader of the party that was responsible for the violence from the African community. And I vowed that before anything happened to me, I would take him out. And after all, that was what I was trained to do. But now, coming back to South Africa, the person that I vowed to kill, the person that I hated the most, had now become my commander-in-chief and the first democratically elected president of the Republic of South Africa. So needless to say, a big mess with your head kind of scenario. I tried to get out of this environment. And to cut a long story very short, Nelson Mandela himself heard of the scenario and in an interview tried to question why I was wanting to get out of what I was doing. In explaining to him how I had accepted Christ and I could no longer do what I was doing, I could no longer work with manipulating people's lives or dispose of those lives, he shared with me his story of conversion in prison. And so he said, as a converted Christian, if you are telling me truthfully that you are trying to do the opposite of what you used to be, would it be correct to assume that instead of trying to kill me with that bullet you've been carrying around, you'd be willing to take one for me, that you'd be willing to protect me? It messes with your head quite considerably. But here, instead of being fired, instead of being kicked to the curb, he offered me a job within the higher-ranking intelligence and presidential guard community. And still to this day question how that all came about, how that all worked. But I'm again struck at the awe and the intensity of how quickly my life changed direction because of a decision I made in a split second. I accepted the challenge that the president offered me and started working for the honor guard. But it wasn't too long after that that I felt that I couldn't even do that anymore because I would still be carrying arms. I would still be willing, or should be willing, to take a life. And the more I was studying scripture, the more I was getting back into the church scene, the more I felt that I couldn't do it. And so I took the opportunity to quit my job, and this time the government let me go. And my life took on a whole different direction. It wasn't too long before I was giving Bible studies to people. I was getting more involved in church. I was leading out in praise and worship. I was elected a deacon and eventually an elder in the church. Just an absolutely amazing experience being able to let go of the past and to move forward, knowing that I was accepted and that nobody was holding my past over me. Just having that second chance, just knowing that no matter where I've been, no matter what I've done, there's still this chance, still this opportunity to be accepted and to be used by God. It is just amazing when you can let God work, when you can stop being who you are and become who He wants you to be. In a split second, we can do something that will change the course of our lives forever. And in my industry that I used to be in, I realized that life can be taken in a split second. I'm not here to preach fire and brimstone, but we need to understand we have life now. And Joshua at Shechem said, "Choose ye this day whom you will serve." So choose ye this day. Make your mind up for God now and work on introducing people to Christ. Have a burden for people around you. Every single person is precious. Show it, live it, love it. I guess that would be my story briefly.